Hey friends, welcome to another edition of the Tennis and Bagels podcast. This is your host Vanch, and joining me today is the wonderful Damian Kust. He's a writer for Last Word on Sports, I believe, and he has a Cracked Rackets podcast that he does weekly for the Challenger Tour, so definitely check that out. He's a great follow on Twitter as well. So Damian, how are you?
Fine. After such an introduction, of course. Yeah, how could I be anything else but fine? Yeah, I think this is my second time appearing on the show. Happy to be here again, and yeah, just excited to talk about Monte Carlo and all the other stuff with you.
Yeah, excited to get into it. Obviously, you're sort of known as the guy who spots future talent, I guess, and junior talent and stuff going. So to ask you about any players, past the top 100, I feel like you're quite a good source for that. So we'll get into that as well. But I guess we'll start with Monte Carlo. Obviously, that was the biggest event on the calendar this week, and Andre Rublev won his first Masters 1000. Pulled off two spectacular wins in the semis and in the final. I mean, what were your sort of big takeaways from the week as a whole for Rublev and what this could mean in his career moving forward, I guess?
Yeah, I have some, I don't know if controversial, but I have some strong opinions about it because frankly, I think a lot of stars had to align for this title to happen. That does not mean that he hasn't done well, but I also think that it's not going to change that much in his career. The thing is that for years we've been just thinking that guys like Medvedev, Zverev, they kept stopping him in some very important matches in his career, right? Grand Slam quarterfinals, which is a stage he still hasn't progressed past. Tsitsipas, maybe he has a good rivalry with him, right? 6-all, I think, right now.
Yeah, 6-5, I believe, still, for Steph, right? Yeah.
Because you're not counting.
Oh yes,
which is terrible.
No, you're right. I wish they counted that. I wish they counted, but
yeah. So it is 6-5 in the ATP Tour official match, let's say.
Yes.
Well, what I mean is he lost to him twice in the most important matches, let's say. So Monte Carlo final 2021 and in 2020 Roland Garros quarters.
Right.
And every time we sort of thought that these guys are going to stop Rublev from winning the big titles, and that was true. Here, no one was around. But again, we're coming to a sort of spot where the next generation, let's say, Sinner, Alcaraz, Rune. I know you have the whole farms.
And you were gonna come up with that.
Yeah, quintuple group of players, but let's maybe say that they have sort of separated themselves from, especially Musetti, also Felix, and the thing is that I think soon they're going to be almost unreachable for Rublev. Like they're going to probably be what Medvedev and Zverev have been for him over the years. Maybe the matchups aren't as terrible, but I think the difference in quality is probably gonna get there. And it was just the perfect opportunity for Rublev, but I still give him a lot of credit for actually taking it because, in the past, there's also been some minor chances that he wasn't able to convert. Even with Rune being so tired in the final and, from the opening set, it was clear that he was trying to be more aggressive. He had to finish the points early, got just completely steamrolled in the second. But even with how you could so clearly see that Rune is just unable to play his usual stuff in the decider, Rublev still had to, make some very important shots, like the breakpoint at 1-4. For that, he still deserves a lot of credit, I feel. And I think the stars have aligned for him. For years, he's been such a dominant, a very constant presence in the top 10. I actually checked this today. I wouldn't know it, but since the time when he first entered the top 10, which I think was October 2020, he only left it for 2 weeks last year, which is a pretty crazy stat when you think about it. And even if maybe he hasn't been threatening for big titles that much, other than the two ATP 1000 finals that he had in 2021, since he had Monte Carlo, still that this is a real feat, and it just makes sense that someone like that got an opportunity he was able to convert. Of course, he avoided most of his big rivals, Djokovic as well. I mean, they haven't faced that much. That's why I haven't mentioned him before. They only played like a couple of times. But Of course, Djokovic was also not there. He only had to beat one of the Rune, Sinner, Alcaraz generation, so to speak. And well done for taking it. I don't think it's gonna like propel him into a Grand Slam champion or something like that. And I think it might as well have been like his only big title opportunity. I wouldn't be shocked if this is the case. And even more important that he took it, of course, for him. And he was a little he was a bit stuck with the two sort of his peers being better than him, also having great matchups, especially because Medvedev and Zverev have just always been killing him with how well they defend. And then the approaching three greats. I don't want to say new big three because we've been using this way too.
Oh yeah.
But with these guys approaching the top echelon of the game, I didn't really like his chances. Like in a year, I think they're going to be like pretty distantly better than Andrei Rublev. So especially key that he took it, and of course extremely emotional for him for sure. Because if you're in the top 10 for how long is it now? To almost 3 years, then definitely your one and only focus basically is going to be to get that one big title at least.
Yeah, I think it was a step forward for him in terms of him taking the opportunity. I don't actually think that's very controversial, by the way. I mean, if you looked at the thing that I will give him credit for, I mean, if you looked at the 4 semifinalists, he was the one that I would have put fourth likely to come out on top. So,
yeah.
Even I know people were talking about Fritz on clay and not being very capable on the surface and stuff, but I still felt like things had to go his way, particularly in the third sets of both of these matches, and particularly in coming back from a breakdown in the third against Fritz. I mean, obviously, with the rain delay and everything, and then because he had lost to Fritz, I think 3 times before this, all in Masters 1000s in kind of similar type fashion. So for him to turn that rivalry around and get a win and then do it in the final, I guess, it did kind of help him that he was more fresh also going into this final, because, Sinner and Rune went late into the evening, and, by the time Rune went to bed, it was probably like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then it was such a quick turnaround from there. But yeah, what did you think of Rune's physical issues again in the third set? Especially because I did feel like his legs went away.
Yeah, I think they started they didn't even. There wasn't a moment in the match where he wasn't impacted. I think from the get-go he was playing so much more aggressively than he was against Sinner, for example, where mostly he was just grinding him down. Let's say. Yeah. It wasn't really something like the match against the Minor in Acapulco or Wawrinka in Indian Wells. I think this was just more explainable because, as you said, he was playing until 10 p.m. local time and possibly went to bed like 4 hours later or 5 hours later. So I think this is more normal. This isn't the sort of cramping that Rune used to suffer from in the past. This is just, the same thing happened with Medvedev in the quarterfinals when he beat Zverev, played until 11 p.m., after 11 p.m. even, and then was dead the next day. And Rune just sort of never had a chance of winning this final, but yet almost did it. Which in a way, I suppose, is pretty impressive. He showed a lot of skill in, just playing incredible shots without moving his legs in the first set. There was this one, I think it was 5-5, the first break point that he saved with a backhand winner down the line. And it was just such an absurd shot to hit with the sort of issues that he had. So, when I saw this, right now, no one is going to talk about this because, of course, he lost that game in the next point. But he was just hitting some ridiculous things to even get himself in the position to win this match. I do feel, though, that if Rune was fully fit, I wouldn't be giving Rublev that much of a chance in this one. So, again, sorry, I kind of don't believe in the Russians still in that sense. But, of course, this is something that we're not going to be mentioning in 10 years. Maybe you ask me in 20 years, and maybe I'm not even going to remember that Rune was fatigued. This is not something that is going to go down in history. This is not something that you're going to find in like an almanac. That's Rune, the previous day he played until 10 p.m. and then he came out and already had to shorten the points. play more drop shots, just press a lot more than he did against Sinner, for example. And this is not something that really matters when it comes to, like, in the long run, the bottom line. So yeah, but still a very impressive effort, of course, from Rune. But I do think that the physical issues stopped him from winning this title.
Yeah, I do think that was the end. At the end of it, I was impressed by Rule's composure throughout the match. I must say, because especially when he lost the first set, normally you see him quite down at that point. Then, usually some sort of visceral reaction, with his racket or with his has some kind of a mini outburst and then has to quickly reset. But I think there was a kind of release of tension in this one, to where, like, he had lost so many matches like this in the past. So for him, it was kind of like a bonus, if that makes sense, to come back and win the second set so comfortably. And then, and then I think when he was down 1-4 in the third set, he kind of, had sort of mentally any kind of a hold at that point would be a big boost, because then, there was a chance that Rune was going to get tight, and I think 2 double faults in the next game, and then, gets broken at 5-all, and that backhand winner that you're talking about, that reminded me of the one that he had in Australia, actually, in the 5th set, I want to say, in the tiebreak, even though he ended up losing it. Yeah.
To me, it reminds me of that forehand from Alcaraz when he played Nori.
Oh yes, I was going to bring that one up too.
Not moving at all, but it just insane shot, even more because it was like almost around the net, or maybe even around the net. But that reminded me of this. But certainly, I can't remember what I was going to say. I just started picturing Alcaraz hitting that forehand. Now my mind is just on that. I know what I wanted to say. Yeah, the composure was definitely there, and I agree with what she said, that maybe after being crushed in the previous 2 ATP 1000 finals, because they weren't even close, right?
No, yeah.
Maybe at this point, he just was able to play a bit more loosely. I know a lot of people are going to talk about the 2 smashes that Holger missed at 5-all as well as some sort of instance of him choking, but I think, if you just look at the physical state that he was in, no one would find it easy to hit these sort of routine shots, in normal circumstances. So, it was definitely a better mental effort than from Rublev, than it was a worse mental effort from Rune, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, Rune's shot selection, though, this year, in general, before this week, has been a little up and down. Like in some matches, particularly I think in Miami when he played Fritz, or in some of his losses, he did pick up a few injuries as well. He hurt his wrist in Australia. He kind of wasn't really the same in February. And then in Indian Wells in Miami, of course, he went out earlier than he would have liked. And I just felt like sometimes he was pulling the trigger on certain shots that I'm like, just use your amazing athleticism and court coverage and, just rely on being steady, because your backhand is very steady and you can just trade with it, and then you can wait for the right ball and, then go for the drop shot or go for the down the line winner. And it's like, there were other times where he was so far behind the baseline and I was like calling for him to be more aggressive. And he was just, because he can really do both game styles very well. It's just a matter of him sort of having that tactical clarity and focus to just keep it going, because he still kind of has these ups and downs in the match. So yeah, that would be my only hesitation for like picking him to do something really big this year in a major. I just feel like he might not be ready from a focus standpoint and maintaining his shot selection. I think I might even be more concerned about that than the physical issues, and maybe they kind of go hand in hand, because obviously when you're fatigued, then your shot selection can suffer and it sort of bleeds into the other.
Yeah, endurance is a big thing though too. Like if we're thinking about him winning best of 5 tournament, one of the slams, and potentially beating some of these guys back to back. Let's say, I don't know, Sinner, Djokovic, Alcaraz, Djokovic, whatever. Some of the combinations. That could be rough if he plays for 4 hours against someone like Sinner, Djokovic, and maybe especially that Sinner match took so much out of him, because he was playing, a lot of the time he was the one playing 2 or 3 meters behind the baseline, and But I actually like what you said about like his shot selection being spotty in the first 3 months of the year, because Clay should be able to like give him more options in that, right? Growing up, it was always the surface he first felt most comfortable on. Roland Garros juniors title, of course, but basically until the end of 2022, it was the only surface he had huge success on, other than the challenger title somewhere at the end of 2021. So I think on clay he definitely found more balance, and the first two matches against Medvedev and Thiem, I know both opponents are depleted in a way as well, because Medvedev was tired and Thiem, it's not the team of old.
I actually thought Thiem played pretty decent. I thought Thiem was not bad, honestly.
But I thought Rune was just too good for both of these guys, right? And against Sinner, he definitely played a lot more defense than he is used to, and maybe that's why he was also tired. But I think, like you said, he has definitely shown that he can do both. He can do basically any game plan available to people in tennis. He can rush the net. He can crush the first ground strokes. Sometimes, of course, one of these game plans isn't really going to work for him. Like against Sinner in the opening set, he was really trying to do something to stop Yannick from just killing every single ball, and he was just pressing with the first shot in the rally. But even when one of these doesn't fail, he definitely has a lot of options, and I think that being so just having such a complete skill set is definitely something that sort of separates him from Sinner and makes him closer to Alcaraz, at least in that sense. Although, of course, it's very hard to compare like who's actually going to be better between, let's say, Rune and Sinner. But he's definitely more complete, like Carlos is than Yannick, who actually kind of reminds me of Rublev in some ways. Just definitely does it better. They are a bit one-dimensional in how they play off the ground, but Sinner just does it a bit more violently.
Yeah, and he has that explosive movement and court coverage, and he can hit open stance better. I think that's obviously he can defend better on his backhand, and there are like some subtle differences. But oddly, going into this one, I felt like if Sinner and Rublev played each other, because their games are so similar, and because Sinner does everything a little better, like you were saying, I felt like Sinner would have had a great chance to win his first Masters. But I think also the conditions changing so much in that semifinal, like it's starting in the day when it was windier, and a bit faster in the day obviously and livelier, versus like slow and dead and very like hard to hit through. It just made it so difficult for Sinner to get the ball by Rune, because Rune was doing such a good job of hitting really high and heavy over the net, and he was making like Sinner's backhand, he was kind of making it look average, which is not normally the case. and then he was just having a lot more success, I felt like, just finishing at net, and those natural sort of instincts and touch shots and like the drop shot lob combos. I know Sinner hit that spectacular backhand cross court. That's kind of his trademark now, going back, and instead of doing the tweener, he kind of maintains really good balance, and then he goes for a really good angle on the pass. But I just felt like Sinner had to do so much to win points. And I can't really say he bottled the last two sets, because he never really had any lead to start with.
He got back from 0-3, right, to 5-5 in the second. But he still did some damage to himself before the break with these games. Where
I think that was crucial, because his level dipped so much in that game that he got
like 100 unforced errors, right? And then after they returned, he still got it back to 5-5. Of course, it's not said that if they were at 2-all, let's say, that Sinner was going to be able to just win the match, but maybe that would have been the case. But I think it definitely, the heavier, the wetter conditions did not suit him. They allowed Rune to just have an answer to that power, start using the drop shot, because at the beginning, he couldn't really drop shot Sinner, because he was just constantly 5 meters behind the baseline, right? And I know he hit that backhand, and it's a very smart choice, of course. Like almost always, it's better than the twinner. But in general, in like these cat and mouse play, Sinner doesn't really hold up, and Rune was able to sort of get to that. But Sinner will definitely be very disappointed. I frankly didn't think he was gonna win his first tournament in ATP 1000 in Monte Carlo. I think it's more likely to happen on hard courts. But when I saw that first set, yeah, I mean, when I saw how he was just destroying every single ball, and it was pretty funny because even when he had like a routine sitter forehand, he was still going at it with like 170 kilometers an hour. They were constantly showing on my TV feed the speed of Sinner's forehand. And yeah, he was just going at it so hard, and I saw him crashing Rublev in the opener, and then I started believing. And what she said about Sinner Rublev, I wasn't really sure like what to think about who would be better for the Russian, because yeah, as you said, they're similar. Sinner does everything better, but at the same time, Rublev has all these other options that can sort of make Rublev at least a little confuse him at least a little bit. And yeah, I think if we saw 100% fit Rune, then probably he also would have been able to do that more to Rublev. Of course, he was kind of overplaying the drop shot in the actual final that we saw, but well, he had to finish points earlier, so that's one of the main ways to do that, I guess. Whenever you play a drop shot, it's 90% chance that it's gonna be finished, whether it's you winning the point or the other guy, who knows? But yeah, it's certainly gonna make the points shorter.
Yeah. Someone who did actually use the drop shot pretty well, is not someone you would associate with the drop shot, was Fritz actually in this tournament, because you know, I think he talked about the drop shot not being, it doesn't have to be very good on clay, because you just, as long as you push your opponent back and you hit heavy to the weaker wing, then you have so much court to work with that you can always just disguise it. You can almost just disguise it, but even if it floats a little bit past, let's say the immediate doubles alley, like just near the net post, like you're pretty much good. But I guess in talking about Fritz, I mean, I had him getting to the final, so I was very confident that he was going to do well on clay. Just, I didn't really understand like the whole consensus of like Fritz not being a great clay court player. Like, I know we have a history in America of players not doing very well on clay, and this was the first time a man had even made the semis since Vince Spadea in 2003 Monte Carlo. But I just felt like Fritz has been putting in the hard yards on clay ever since. I mean, his first junior final, I think it was against Tommy Paul in 2015, Roland Garros. He made the final. I think he played the full clay season in 2019, and he seemed like he was very committed to getting better on the surface. But I just feel like with his improved game now, we didn't really get to see that evolution, because last year he was injured the entire time, and he lost a very close 3-setter to Davidovich Fokina. And I thought, okay, and he wasn't even healthy in that match, because he was just coming off of a super tiring, sunshine swing, and I think playing in Houston also. And when he didn't play in Houston, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm picking Fritz to like do some damage here, because Wawrinka played very well, I thought. Lehechka was pretty good for about 2 sets. He found a way through him, and then obviously he was very impressive against Tsitsipas, who I think is still like coming back from the shoulder thing. But overall, like I was pretty impressed, and I was actually frankly very disappointed in the last 2 sets against Rublev. I thought that was maybe some of the worst 2 sets he's played since, I guess, fall 2021, since this new improved version of Fritz. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the way he's played at Roland Garros 2022 kind of left a sour taste in our minds, let's say, not yours clearly. I know.
Yeah, I just discounted that one because I was like, okay, he had the foot thing, and like clearly we're
right, I suppose. Yeah, but Fritz in general over the past few years definitely improved his movement so much on clay. I remember being like almost unable to watch him play from clay sometimes. He was just cow and ice is the perfect description. Not so much anymore, and like definitely not. Especially the way he's covering the forehand corner now. He was also resetting with all these forehand loops. I mean, at some point you're just watching him, and wow, is this really Taylor Fritz?
Yeah.
And of course, one of the big reasons why he's in the top 10 right now, and that sort of caliber of a player, is the way he's improved his backhand. And I think on clay especially, it also helps him so much. Although against Rublev, he definitely should have been winning more of these backhand cross-court exchanges that they just kept going for. And most often it was actually Fritz, I think, making the first error, which was quite a surprise. But I think you're right in that if Fritz played at the sort of peak level that he displayed against Lehechka in the last 2 sets, like a set and a half, let's say, and also the set and a half against Tsitsipas without that one wobbly game, he could definitely have more than Rublev for me. That the peak level was higher, he just didn't really display it. I did not think that Fritz was going to like maybe get to the final semi. I thought he might be quite vulnerable early because the draw was tough. I mean, Wawrinka, Lehečka in a row, that's already a big test. And I guess it was a big test because, as you said, Wawrinka played very well, had 5 set points in the opener, and that was basically all he had energy for. So we have no idea what would have happened if he actually converts one of them. And Lehečka was honestly comfortably outplaying Fritz for the first set and like a few games. I even remember watching it and like thinking that this is where you see the difference of the movement. That Lehečka, out of just defensive positions, is still able to just hit a good ball. He's able to put some pressure on Fritz. Fritz not so much. And then for like 3 sets, he entered into this insane, absolutely insane peak level. And that was very impressive. And I do wonder what we're gonna see from him now, because as you said last time, he only played. Well, Houston doesn't count. Let's say Houston doesn't count. Karlsruhe doesn't count. So he only played 2 European red clay events. So I wonder what he's gonna do. Definitely like him, like his chances more in Madrid than Rome and Paris. But I also don't think he's gonna be as poor at Roland Garros as he was last year. So that's actually after Monte Carlo, that's one of the most exciting storylines, honestly, on the ATP tournament for the remainder of the clay season. What is Fritz going to do? I think Munich plays pretty fast as well. So maybe he can have his chances there. Of course, the draws this week are next week are kinda weaker with the free events. So there's definitely some chance for Fritz to already go beat them.
Yeah, and I think Fritz has done a really good job of like improving his floor this year, because even last year he went on these really big runs, but I didn't feel like he was able to win consistently with his, let's say, B or C level. But I feel like he's doing that more often this year. I mean, he's 13-2 in tie breaks. He's his only bad loss, I think, would be like the second round of the Australian Open. But aside from that, I think
bad because it was straights, right? Yeah. But it's not like actually bad. I mean, Popyrin was pretty insane.
He was playing out of his mind that match for sure.
Yeah.
But no, I think I agree with you about his movement, because like his explosive movement is so much better than it used to be. I think in general, even on the hard courts. And I think the extra time actually on the clay, like it bodes well for him, because anything like shoulder height or anything remotely short, he's just going to crush. And if you have, especially on his forehand, I think like that's another shot that's improved, because now he can just terminate the point straight up with his forehand, and he doesn't like to come forward. So for a guy who doesn't like to come forward, I feel like if you have such a strong weapon from the back of the court like that, to just, he can go behind the opponent, he can just crush, he can laser that thing for a winner. And I actually think his backhand has always been really good, because when he was coming up in juniors, like I remember watching him in Memphis 2016, like when he made the final there and then lost to Nishikori, I was like, okay, he's able to hang with Nishikori backhand to backhand. Like I feel like the ball striking is very good. Like I feel like once he connects in the middle of his strings, he can be very precise, he can find really good angles. And he can do that, honestly, against Tsitsipas. He was taking the ball super early and going down the line really quickly. So he could get keep Tsitsipas honest, basically, and then get something shorter and then attack the backhand. So he was doing a really good job, I feel like, of that. Because I think so many players, when they play Steph, they think, okay, I just have to go straight. I just always have to attack the backhand. Keep going there, it'll break down. But actually, it really doesn't, especially on clay, because, Steph is actually, like, pretty comfortable. When he's set, like, just trading, he can do that, like, pretty well, but you have to rush him. So in order to rush him, you have to open up the space. So you have to go to his forehand like earlier in the point, like maybe with an inside in or a backhand line. And I think Fritz actually was doing that a lot better. Like he was taking more risk than he would normally have to, because Tsitsipas is also a really good mover on clay, so he can cover that wing. He can get to that faster, and because he likes to cheat a little bit, like after the serve, he sort of wants to hit only inside out forehands from this backhand side. So I feel like I think Fritz did that really well. And then a few times he also threw in the drop shot, and they were not good drop shots, but they worked.
Yeah, they don't have to be, definitely not. In general, it's something that maybe wasn't the best Tsitsipas that we could have gotten,
No, it wasn't for sure.
He played like the first 2 rounds. He didn't really get any rhythm.
No, he didn't. Yeah, I was just going to mention that, because the retirement, and then Nicholas Jarry didn't play as well as I thought he would. So
yeah. 5 against Bonzi and 6-4 against Jarry, who doesn't give you rhythm. So and he's a guy who, after all the mess that Sunshine Double was for Tsitsipas, he kind of needed that, right? He just needed a few matches. So I think it's especially important for him that he plays Barcelona now. So that backhand maybe wasn't holding up as it usually does on clay. But yeah, Fritz definitely has more explosiveness in his footwork than he did later in the semi. Because I think especially when he played Rublev, this was also what he lacked. They were playing just constantly backhands cross-court exchanged, of course. No one really willing to go down the line most of the time. But in the second and third set, it was just always Rublev getting the first forehand. And I guess in this matchup, it was just the most important thing in the world, right? To get inside out forehand. Because that's what they live on. And
I was praising his backhand so much, and then he plays Fritz. I mean, then he plays Rublev, and he makes 22 on 4 serves and 5 winners, and it was not there for him. And he didn't serve nearly as well as he probably should have. But then also, like, those really slow conditions definitely didn't favor him. Because he's also another one of those players, like, to win these elite matches, like, he has to be on with his serve, because if his serve is off, I think he's still more reliant on just having a good.
I still kind of feel like though he has the bigger weapons than Rublev.
Yeah,
especially in the opener, you could kind of see how different they are on +1 shots.
Oh yeah.
There was a moment when I checked the stats on like short rallies behind the serve, and of course Fritz had like 17-4 or something like that. And on Rublev's serve, it was like 9-9, which was a shock to me. But then I started paying attention to it, and I quickly realized why. I mean, Fritz was first of all defending so well, which we mentioned that the movement is.
He stole that first set with his defense. Many times.
And like he was getting to what Rublev was sending at him, but also Rublev was just not bold enough with his +1 forehands and not really getting out that much out of them. But when Fritz had a good serve, he was just killing the point instantly. And for me, he just has the bigger weapons, but just wasn't able to use them as effectively. And as you said, the backhand did not hold up, which was super weak just to watch. Especially, I was, we both do something for talking tennis.
Yeah.
And I was actually doing the commentary for this match, and I remember saying before it started, that they both are going to play a lot of try to keep each other on the backhand, of course. But Fritz right now, I mean, his backhand is just so much more superior than Rublev.
That's what I thought going in. That's what I was very surprised.
All of these, 30 shot rallies backhand to backhand, and Fritz is always the one to make the first error, and I end up looking stupid.
No, that happens so much. And then Rublev's court positioning was very interesting in that match as well, because like on the return on the backhand wing, he would stand really close to the baseline and just try to take those returns on the rise, and then on the forehand wing, he would be like 5 to 6 meters behind the baseline and try to get more air under his shots. But then like as the match progressed, he was hugging the baseline more better with his court positioning, and like his forehands were actually doing some good damage, inside out, inside in combinations, but. Yeah, I think overall I left that match just feeling very disappointed about Fritz's level really the last 2 sets. Like I was obviously, like I had to credit Rublev, but I just felt like, man, Fritz normally doesn't lose a match like this now. So we will.
That's how I felt after the final.
No, I felt the same. Yeah, in both cases. That's why, like, I agreed with you initially when you were like, that's why I don't think this is like some massive thing for Rublev where now all of a sudden he's going to start, like being a contender to win a slam, because, he generally plays well in Monte Carlo and in Belgrade, and this time of the year, like he usually does pick up the title on the slow clay court and then it started off. So, yeah, I'm really not sure what he's going to do in Madrid and Rome, but it sort of depends on the draw, and it really depends on the draw. I'll say that.
And for him, it especially depends on the draw, right?
Yeah.
It's always dependent on the draw. For some reason, I would have to rewatch some 2020 matches from him. But I feel like that forehand was just much bigger back then. That it was the whole reason why he broke the top 10 back then. And now, as he sort of improved the backhand as well, I don't think he's as explosive as he was in the past, maybe. And in some of the bigger matches, it's definitely been an issue for him. But as you said, in the latter two sets against Ricci, he definitely made sure to play closer to the baseline and finally choose all these maybe just braver options on the +1 forehands that I was really just desperate to see from him after the opener. There was I cannot remember the exact point now, but at the beginning of the second set, I think, because the second set was 6-1, but it was honestly, every single game was so close, right?
Yeah.
But there was that one break point that Rublev saved for a pretty insane inside-in forehand.
Yes.
And that was more or less where I think he started just going for more with these shots. And,
right, because he was up a break at that point. It was 2-1, 30-40, and then he hits that ridiculous inside-in.
Right. I think this is it.
Yeah, right, because that could have been a turning point in the match if Fritz breaks back there, and then, yeah. But yeah, still it was a good week for him, I guess. Yeah, so we'll wait and see what Rublev does the rest of the clay court season. But in terms of the rest of the tournament, was there any other surprises for you, like early rounds? Anything that because Monte Carlo is obviously very difficult to predict, just with the surface change, and then also like just 1 week break between Miami. It's kind of
how early it is after Miami definitely makes it that, and even in matches like Rublev versus Munar, we saw that, right? That he needed a set. I guess the main thing, of course, I wouldn't say it shocked me, but certainly I definitely enjoyed seeing Jan and Struff get around like this. Because frankly, the whole year it just felt like he playing something very close to his peak. He's of course managed to return to the top 100 and basically had no bad losses. I would say there was that one against Gerasimov in Vilnius, which I actually saw live, and he was coming back after a small injury that kept him out of Davis Cup.
Yeah, and
he lost it. He lost that match very easily. So that's the bad loss that he had. But otherwise, whatever he was playing, also the 11-0 record in qualifying, which is pretty crazy, but also a big aspect of why this this year has been so good for him. And then he just crushes everyone in the main draw up until Rublev. So that was very, very fun to watch. And the second the second ATP 1000 quarterfinal of his career, and at the age of 32, maybe there is still a chance that he can get that first ATP2 title. That's something we're always gonna look at when it comes to him. Munich is a good chance, I guess. He was this is his only ATP final. I remember, last year I was even I was talking to him in Braunschweig and mentioning that do you still think you can win that title? And it's just a storyline that I think everyone wants to see. If not, him winning a title, then maybe coming close again. And just a storyline that we want to see continue. And especially after this sort of year that he had in 2022, particularly the first half where he was, I think, like 2-13 up until Wimbledon or something like that. I had a foot issue that he had to also.
Yeah, he got injured. He injured himself in Miami last year, and then he had then he missed like most of the clay court season. I actually think the clay is like his best surface because it gives him.
I would agree.
It gives him more time. Like you would think grass, he's pretty good on grass too, but I think with the clay, like he has more time to set up his big forehand after the serve, and it's kind of like the John Isner thing where it's like Isner's best result is Wimbledon semifinal, so we think like, okay, that's his best surface. But he's like always been like fourth round of Roland Garros quarters.
Yeah,
like
for Isner, it's clearly not.
Yeah,
Isner, you could definitely for Struff, I would agree that it's clay, but he's done well everywhere. But for Isner, it's definitely not grass. Yeah. Somehow he got that. Well, almost made it to the final, 26-24.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you that Struff's best chance is probably in clay. But you wouldn't really be shocked to see him make a final on grass and hard either. And just love this round for him. Of course, it would have looked better if he just managed to serve it out against Ruud at 6-1, 5-2. Now it feels like a competitive match where it really wasn't.
That's right.
But just absolutely crushed him, which I guess was one of the main upsets of the event. Maybe not necessarily the fact that Struff won it. Probably after what he did in the first two rounds. you could kind of think that he has a chance, but yeah, just the style in which he did it, particularly until 6-1, 5-2, of course.
The Casper Ruud though, he's obviously struggling still. I know he won Estoril, last week, and he looked good at times against Kecmanovic, and obviously Halis was playing very well that week, and he managed to squeeze that one out in the third set tiebreak. But I still think his confidence and the penetration, like especially also his backhand, I think was much better last year around this time and the rest of the second half of the year. So like I'm kind of waiting for Casper to like get it going, now, because he's got a lot of points to defend in like Rome and Roland Garros, and I think he'll start to make some progress, but I don't know if he'll, I don't think we can expect him to defend all the points that he did last year and finish number 2 in the world, or get to the finals of ATP finals. Like it was a career year for him in terms of that.
Yeah, making some finals definitely seems like a bit of a stretch for Casper Ruud, especially on hard courts. On clay, you could imagine that, but then again, against most of the opponents he could face in the final, he would have been easily beaten, and that's what happened. Probably one of the worst Grand Slam finals, honestly, that I remember. But yeah, I just wonder how much of that is still coming from that weird warm up that he had. Not having the off season, going for that Latin America tour.
Yeah.
Then having an off season in February, and he's already stated that it was an error.
Yeah, he admitted it was a mistake for sure.
Yeah, I wonder how much of he struggles right now, and I know he's won in the story, and yeah, he played pretty well there. But how much of his struggles right now that they are still going up until this day, I wonder how much of that is actually still the poor preparation that he had, and my assumption is that it's probably a big factor.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much agree with all that. I guess also the other highlight, of course, was Medvedev on clay, getting to the quarters. And yeah, more Medvedev off-court stuff, really. But but also the match against Zverev that he was able to tough that win out, because, yeah, Zverev surfed twice, and then, like with this, he had to save those 2 match points in the tiebreak, and Zverev missed this second serve return on the backhand for one of them, and then the other one he sort of played very passively, but Medvedev took advantage, and he actually, between in this Medvedev-Zverev rivalry, like all these matches go down to the wire. It feels like, all these third sets since 2018, Medvedev has come out of the clutch and sort of like found the answers. And Zverev is like, you would think these last 2 times they played, you would have thought, Zverev would have had a big advantage coming in, at least on paper. Just with his shots doing more damage on a slower court. Indian Wells, Monte Carlo, like 2 of the most slow courts out there. And, he still wasn't able to convert one of them to wins. So I think... yeah, it's definitely psychological as well in some moments.
Was it you that put this poll on Twitter? Like, whose forehand would you like to have?
Oh yeah,
yeah. I keep mentioning that to people because I think it actually it's a very good question, and I think of course no one wanted to have Hurkacz's forehand.
No.
But I think the main sort of idea about this is that for Medvedev and for Hurkacz, even though Medvedev defends with it so well and etc., they are technically flawed.
Yes.
Zverev, not really.
No.
Zverev, it's mental, right?
Yes.
It's the same we saw in that match again.
Although I will say Medvedev has improved his forehand this year. I think with the softer strings, because he switched from razor coat to razor soft Technifiber strings in the off season. So I think he's actually added like a few more miles per hour and some more RPMs and spin. And I noticed in this match, I mean, this should not be happening for Zverev, but, Medvedev was winning like the forehand-to-forehand rallies. And yeah. And he was just doing a lot better, like changing directions, I feel like. He was going down the line earlier and he was just constructing points a little bit better, even though Zverev can produce so much more power and it's a lot easier for him, like, because his technique is better.
Yeah, I mean, probably everyone can remember like at least 1 or 2 Alexander Zverev matches when the forehand is firing, and that's when that's the performance you remember for the rest of your life and etc. But not, but most of the time, it's just mental, and he when it comes to the crunch, he has many times displayed that he is not willing to go for it. He wasn't willing to go for it in the most important moments against Medvedev. And yeah, I mean, I cannot really like praise Medvedev for his Monte Carlo run that much.
Yeah.
But of course he did well to steal this match. But he was never he never had any business winning.
I know.
And perhaps even more in Monte Carlo than Indian Wells. But well, definitely more in how they went. But I think even given the courts, I would say that in Monte Carlo, Zverev was even more a favorite for me against Medvedev. But yeah, it just hasn't materialized. Of course, it's still early in Zverev's comeback. He has given some big statements recently about him, winning Roland Garros if he could get injured. Frankly, if he won that tiebreak, I kind of buy it. He was really at his peak in that event, but
he last year
won that tiebreak. Like he must have won that tiebreak. The second set tiebreak against the Dow. We don't know that, but
even in that match, he was unclutch in a lot of moments. Like he was up 6-2 in the first set. He was serving for the second set, and then he double faults 3 times, and then he was up. Yeah, so it's like it still feels like the nerves, and I don't think the second serve has ever gotten better. Frankly, like he's had so many years now to get that shot better. And it lets him down every single time in these big moments. I feel like, unless his best chance to beat Medvedev would have been serve for it at 5-4 in the second, finish it off in straights, and once the match went to a third, I'm like, okay, Medvedev's winning this. That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really need to have like a huge second serve, right? I mean, Rublev is a good example. It's a weakness, but he can somehow hold on to it, right? He can. It doesn't do that much damage to him. But when you start missing the second serve, that's when the problem comes in for sure.
Yeah, because he sort of like decelerates on it. So he's either going like, I mean, 2020 US Open, he was either hitting 135s or 68. There was like no in between.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, that was basically like a theft in nighttime, shall we say, for Medvedev. But, or I guess robbery is a better word. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like these 1 week Masters events because right from the get go, you're getting like top 32 players basically facing off against each other, and it's like, it's kind of been a blur because like the last 4 days were pretty crazy with Monte Carlo, and now it feels like it's already over.
Yeah, I can't really relate to people saying that the 2 week Masters are like a drag, because if you watch, at the same time, if there are 4 challengers, I don't really feel that. I can't really say that I'm ever, frankly, I like almost other than December, I never really feel like there's not enough tennis. But if you're like only trying to watch Indian Wells, Miami, or any of the other 1.5 week Masters now, I can get that. Like if it's on a Tuesday, for example, there are just 4 singles matches, that's definitely something that shouldn't maybe exist. I mean, I don't know. Indian Wells and Miami are fine, but I don't know if we ever really need more 1.5 week Masters. But we're gonna see, right? We can't really judge them before we actually get to them.
Yeah, pretty much that's what I thought as well, because like Indian Wells, Miami, we're used to that, but the others, we kind of have to see how it goes, because like, I mean, there were some other events that were on the calendar, but now because they're both 2 weeks. It's, I think it's because like the first 3 days, like you have the buys, like under 32 players, all 32 get buys, and then it's it doesn't really feel like a premier event, I would say, until like that Friday, the Friday before, and then it's like so saturated for like 5 days, and then it kind of dies down. But of course, there's so much other tennis. But yeah, if you wanted to,
the first, no.
Oh yeah, you were gonna say something.
No, I just wanted to say that for me, like the first rounds are probably the most interesting. For sure. That's when the fighters play.
No, I find them very interesting too. It's mostly just the larger audience in terms of like the non-hipsters, shall we say?
Yeah.
But But yeah, speaking of challengers, let's talk about Sarasota, because that was won by Daniel Altmaier, and he beat Galan in the final. Galan of beating Stefanos Tsitsipas in the first round of fame at the U.S. Open. But yeah, what did you make of the tournament as a whole, and Altmaier winning in the end?
The biggest green clay event, definitely quite fun, because it just happens once a year, right? We only get 3 events on this in the States. Galan was actually the defending champion, so a bit of a surprise, I guess, in the final in a way, the Battle of the Daniels. But certainly it just I love variety in terms of court conditions, and just watching a few events a year on hard true is quite cool. The more usual bounce rather than clay, the faster conditions, and both guys definitely enjoy it, especially this year. I mean, in recent years, you could maybe even make an argument that Altmaier has been similarly as successful on hard courts as on clay, or something like that. And Galan, as you said, I mean, he won the he defeated Tsitsipas, but since it's been a very tough road for him. But both guys basically secured their Roland Garros main draw spots, I think, with these runs. Not sure if Galan was really fully in danger. Altmaier definitely was. He didn't go deep, and the cutoff is tomorrow, so quite huge for them as well. And anytime also we get these American challengers with really nicely packed with HD quality or like almost HD quality of the stream and the commentary, that's very cool for a challenger enjoyer as well. But I thought in the final Altmaier was just able to create so much more when it comes to offense of the backhand side. Neither guy you would really say it's their better wing. Altmaier, of course, has a one-hander, but probably one of the more stable ones on the tour. And compared to Galan, he was just able to do so much more with it, and then eventually find the opening with the forehand, move the Colombian. A little bit surprised, I guess, that he won his title, because he was really struggling with Martin Damm in the opening round. But in the end, of course, he gets the 125 points. He's actually going to travel to Munich as well, which is going to be a very hectic and.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a really quick turnaround, and he plays Karatsev in the first round.
Yeah, he got a wild card for this, so I guess he will be very tempted to go. But we'll see how he actually plays when he gets there. Maybe they can give him a Wednesday start. That would certainly be of some help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was 2 points away from losing in the first round, so to hold the trophy at the end is definitely good for him. I spoke to you about this before the podcast, but I think I expected a lot more of Altmaier once he beat Berrettini in the 2020 Roland Garros third round, I believe it was. After that run, I would have expected he would be a solid top 60 player by now. So he's 24, I guess, so he's still got some time. But hopefully this will actually propel him to something better on the clay. I feel like he can actually do some damage with the backhand.
I guess the 2020 Roland Garros was just a little weird as well, right? I mean, right after the pandemic, not everyone got that much play on clay beforehand. There was only Rome, and there were some peculiar results. Of course, not in the end, because Nano Djokovic played the final. That's what you would expect, but Altmaier was definitely one of the stories of the tournament back then, and he has not really come close to replicating that since. Even I would say, most major events, he's been looking kind of underwhelming, for sure. But I think he's quietly made plenty of improvement as well, mostly in how he performs besides clay right now. I think the serve, especially in some indoor events, has been looking just exceptional, and maybe at some point he can combine all of these elements. For now, as I said, he has managed to lock himself up a Roland Garros spot, unless there's like 20 PRs or something.
Sure.
I mean, more like 10 PRs. which usually doesn't happen. So that's definitely quite huge and should be able to allow him for to get more opportunities in the clay season, especially. Which last year I don't think he did particularly well at. I mean, he won a challenger in March, no, not March, May.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think on the main tour he just fell kind of flat every single time in the European clay season.
Right. I think he won a challenger in Ecuador, right? Was that at the end? That was might have been at the end of last year.
At the end,
yeah,
that's at the end of the year. Yeah, he won back to back in Lima and Guayaquil, and in May he won Heilbronn over Andre Martin, who's now banned for doping.
Right. Yeah, because I remember he beat Cecchinato in Korea, and that would have been at the end of the year.
The final, I think, in Ecuador. Yeah.
Yeah. But this was a decent run, I guess, to beat Mahach and then beat. I mean, for Gillan as well, to beat Mahach and then get to the final.
Yeah, super stacked event, right? You're gonna get quarterfinals like Kubler Mahach. I mean, that's actually crazy. Usually, you don't even get two of these guys playing a challenger, especially Kubler this year. But I think Mahach now, once he gets to, because he was out injured last year between April and like beginning of August. So once he gets all these points now, he maybe also will be seen more on the main tour rather than in challenger events. So. Yeah, this was definitely, especially the top half of the draw, Gallant playing Vukic in the quarters, just an insane quality of the field. But yeah, that's the biggest green clay event that we're gonna get, of course.
Yeah. While I was thinking of Altmaier, I forgot to mention Musetti, of course, because he went on a bit of a run in Monte Carlo, beating Kecmanovic and Nardi, 3 bagels in a row. Against Kecmanovic and Nardi, and then coming back from 6-4, 4-2, obviously, against Djokovic. Were you surprised by his level this tournament? Because, I certainly expected him to get to the round of 16 and push Djokovic, but I certainly didn't think he would end up winning, especially after the rain delay and just, based on the match they had at Roland Garros last year. Obviously, we know he can present Djokovic's problems, particularly Djokovic was coming back from a long layoff like this, and, Monte Carlo traditionally hasn't been his best tournament in the last 7 or 8 years since winning it in 2015. Only made the quarters twice. So I definitely expected it to be very tricky for Novak. But he was really able to showcase what makes him very good on clay.
That's on the one hand, but on the other hand, Djokovic, when he was poor against Gakov, I didn't really think that much of it. Because, as you said, first match since Dubai, even in Dubai, he wasn't really spot on from the get-go. So, I just figured it was going to take him a match or two. I thought that he was probably going to beat Musetti quite easily, though, but most of that, I would say, was not really on the Italian, but just the fact that the elbow issue made it difficult for Djokovic. The serve speed was down.
Yeah, serve and forehand,
very wonky. I remember at first, I didn't really think that much of the arm sleep before I noticed that the serve is very hindered. But I remember just noticing that his forehand technique is like all over the place. It happens sometimes with Djokovic. That's why you don't really think that maybe it's an injury instantly. There, of course, is that match against Del Potro in Shanghai where he just falls over almost after.
Oh yeah, that really drunk game. In the second set.
Yeah, that's that game when he's drunk, yeah. So I didn't really think of it instantly when I saw that he was struggling with his forehand technique a bit. But yeah, over the course of the match, it was definitely very visible that the serve and forehand are just not potent as usual. And I think that led to this loss. And perhaps Musetti even kind of proved it with his very underwhelming showing in the quarters. And maybe
I think most of that was down to the
farms.
I think most of that, though, to be fair, was down to beating the world number 1 and then like the euphoric feeling and like not quite being able to recover properly. I did think he was going to lose to Sinner in straight sets, but farms becomes a thing when Musetti gets back on clay. Then we can actually because I did think like towards the end of last year, like him winning Hamburg. doing some better things on indoors. I think he won Napoli as well. He beat Berrettini in straight sets to win that.
Yeah, he won 2 titles.
Yeah, and then he cracked the top 20. So I felt like, at least on the clay, I think he's a top 15 player.
Well, this year, maybe in this event, but before that, it was very rough for him. And Musetti kind of created this, I think, at the beginning of the year, the United Cup kind of created this idea in their heads that Musetti...
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't think much of that because he didn't play anybody in the top 100.
Yeah, exactly. But still, like, you thought, maybe you didn't, but it was like, okay, he got 4 wins. His win-loss records were still at like 4-5, 4-6, but all the matches he won were against players who, well, don't really feature at the ATP level at all. Some of them barely feature at the challenger level, in fact. And for someone like Musetti, of course, it wasn't maybe that much of a challenge, but still somehow it created the illusion in my head that it's not going as poorly for Musetti as it seemed. But when you actually think about it, the Golden Week, he just don't totally wasted. Perhaps some tough draws, but still.
I don't think he does very well in altitude, Musetti.
Not all of these events are at altitude though, right? Santiago is, but Rio, Buenos Aires, not really. It's still a little faster. Like the South American clay is definitely maybe less appealing for Musetti. Last year, I think he even played Rotterdam instead, right? This year switching. I don't know. Maybe he's gonna just do something exceptional in the clay season, but very often with Musetti, it's just hard to see him beating all these other youngsters. I don't think he's played them that much even, but that's mostly because he doesn't get to the stages of the tournaments where like they feature a lot, right? And he just has so many tools in his repertoire that I think a lot of the time he doesn't really know what to choose. Which is fair. Definitely much tougher to play tennis like he does than it is to play if you're like Andrei Rublev, Felix Auger-Aliassime, someone like that who just knows what your strengths are. They're sort of simple, but they're excellent in their own right. But with Musetti, just always has to be creative. Tries to sort of maybe grind a bit and then find that bucket down the line. It's tough to play like this. I don't know if it's ever going to make it. Although initially, in like 2020, when he had that Wawrinka Nishikori, the wins over Wawrinka and Nishikori in Rome, and then also I think he won 40 challenger for top 400 players in I think it was 6 top 100 wins in 2 weeks. Initially, I was super high on it because the guy is so flashy, right? The guy is so entertaining. You want to watch him play. You want to watch him succeed. You want to watch him play Hamburg ATP 500 all the time. But as time progresses, I just don't know if he's ever going to make it. And he definitely is far behind at least these guys like Alcaraz, Sinner, Luna, which kind of, they kind of...
No, I definitely put him a tier below for sure. It's just, he has some big wins on the clay. I think his record is like 7-7 against top 20 players. So I think, I like him when he plays as an underdog against good players on clay, let's say. When he plays someone who he's supposed to beat, like outside the top, like, some of these matches, like I guess against like the players that he lost to in the Golden Swing, right? I mean, most of these matches were like 6-4, 6-4, and he got his serve doesn't do nearly enough damage. His forehand is breaking down constantly. His he has all the variety and he has all the tools, but it doesn't really like win him consistent. It's not like a consistent way of building points, So I feel like he's and then also his forehand potency goes way up for some reason when he plays on a slower clay court. Because like Tennis Abstract, they have this measure. It's like, I don't know if you've seen, it's like forehand potency, backhand potency, and it's like out of 100. And it's like when he played Alcaraz in Hamburg, it was at like, that was his best day on the forehand. It was like 15.1 or something. I have to dig a little deeper into what those numbers are actually calculating. But
100.
Yeah, it's
he had 15 points.
Okay, wait. No. It's not over 100. It's like,
oh,
it was just the highest number. Like it was 15.1 15.2. I actually have to like look further into like what, why it was so high, but it definitely feels like he just has more time on his forehand, on the clay, and maybe with a higher...
And on the backhand as well.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime he, like when he was coming up, he was basically useless on any surface that was faster than a slow hard court in Acapulco or something like that. Yeah. So he still improved a lot, and particularly in the second half of last year, of course. But I feel like that game plan of just rushing his every ground stroke is still very much in place on everything but clay, and sometimes even on clay. But you're right that the golden swing generally doesn't suit him as much as the clay. And then, of course, he is the clay in Europe. And then he gets a few losses with India Wells, Miami, and then it's hard to kickstart himself again. And it's like all the time, right? But still very much different is this year for him, because it's actually kind of wild to think about this. But last year he was like not even making main draws in Madrid or something like that, right?
Oh, right.
So he actually could be facing this sort of danger again if he cannot produce. If he cannot produce in Hamburg, if he cannot produce this clay court season, maybe next year he's going to be in that spots again. I mean, in these spots again. It's kind of worrying, but he is definitely not as constant in terms of his presence at the top. We can't really be sure that in a year we're still going to have Lorenzo Musetti in the top 20. And, well, hopefully we will, because I said, I mean, he's super entertaining, but just doesn't feel like a game that will ever bring in the most consistent results.
Yeah, I guess the comparison would be Richard Gasquet, right? Because if your backhand is your best shot, you gotta find other ways to win points. It's a tough way to like have a major result, but I think, I think he's still just figuring out how to use all his tools, because like it's almost like if you're building a smoothie, right? And you have all the ingredients, you have all the vegetables, you have all the, you have, you're just missing like the foundation, which is like, you're missing that blender to blend all the ingredients together. And Musetti is kind of figuring that out as we go. Plus, I don't think he's like anywhere near what his physical development is. Because he's like 21? Like just turned 21?
That's, yeah. 2002.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy though that his first main draw of a slam was the 2021 Roland Garros. That's pretty crazy to think. He was barely 19 at that point.
And played the fourth round, right?
Yeah. Then you have the 5-setter with Cecchinato, and then obviously 2 sets to love against Novak. But yeah. Hoping that he'll do something bigger for my farms thing. But yeah, I was starting to honestly lose hope in that acronym. So I was like, maybe should I put Korda in there instead? But then Korda got injured, and then
ever, top 5, then you can write a book on farms.
But no, I very much agree that like it's Sinner, Alcaraz, and Runa right now for sure.
Yeah,
they're like,
who wouldn't,
right? Especially when they're all in the top 10, it just makes it very easy to, yeah. But in terms of Stuttgart next week, are you looking forward to the return of all those top WTA players? And obviously 9 of the top 10.
It's an insane event, frankly, and this is of course related to the fact that the WTA is not really doing the best job in terms of organizing events. And there's just no other options for these women to play. I mean, maybe they would have been in Stuttgart anyway. Stuttgart was always very strong, right? So That's not really what I'm saying here. But like players who are not in the top 30, they cannot play this event unless the qualifying. But even the qualifying is really strong. And just what are you going to do as a player ranked 50, 70 on the WTA tour right now? There's just nothing for you to play. You need to play some high point ITFs, but it's also, you're then playing for 125 points at the most. So it's really quite terrible that this happens. But at the same time, this is why we get all of these insane first round, second round matchups. You can play a Grand Slam champion or a top 10 player in every single round. And it's just insane. I mean, Krejcikova, Samsonova, and then play Sabalenka. Come on, it's just absolutely impossible. But yeah, in general, this event I think always brings out some pretty good quality. I really like the indoor clay combo. It's fast. It's it's a little faster than what we get usually, but for my preferences, this is really nice. And I feel like in the past, definitely the Stuttgart, the Porsche Open or whatever, has brought out a lot of good stuff out of the players there. And of course, that is helped by the fact that the fields are so strong every single year.
Yeah, and usually you see like a lot of the beginners do very well. Like some of the fighter ball strikers. I mean, I guess, yeah, like, you know, the people who you don't necessarily associate with having really great Roland Garros results, like a Petra Kvitova or like
last year.
Some
so well, right? Almost each Świątek was probably the closest one to get Świątek in the win streak.
Yeah. But Świątek starting right away against most likely Qin Wen Zhang is that's a tough start. Particularly coming back from injury.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this Qin Wen Zhang breakthrough, frankly. Like, this has been a bit tiring at this point, because like for a year it seems like she's always very close to having a big event, and then she loses like a match with Tapova now in Miami, or at the slams she lost some matches that she really perhaps shouldn't have. Yeah. She's playing Alicia Parks in the opening round as well, which we both were very high on, but I don't know if on indoor clay she can do it. Of course, it's still indoors, but obviously either of these players will be a pretty tough test for Świątek right away, both with huge serves. So not a given that Świątek is going to load deep here, not a given that she's going to win it. And yeah, even last year when she was in this insane disposition, she Samsonova was probably the match where she struggled most during that 37 match win streak. So even last year it kind of proved that itself that in Stuttgart it's not a guarantee that she's going to be that dominant. Of course, she also won 3 other matches, but I guess only the way she crashed Sabalenka was like mightily impressive. Otherwise she kind of had a pretty good draw as well. This time it looks like the draw will be much tougher. She's not gonna play Ebelis in the second round. At least that's definitely not gonna happen.
Yeah. Do you think Świątek is winning Stuttgart, or do you have someone else, frankly, in your mind?
I mean, I can tell you that I don't think she is gonna win, but who is going to? But I just think if she is to play the first event after coming back from the rib injury, also with some mental question marks recently, just how easily she's been, I don't want to say giving up, but maybe not really fighting to her dash, but in the matches, she either wins very easily or she just loses just as comfortably for the opponent. So if she has to play something like Qin Wen Zhang, then looking at the draw, I don't know, Vekic or Sakari or Pliskova, that could be an easier round maybe for her. But yeah, if she has to play Rybakina and Sabalenka back-to-back as well, I don't really like her chances of the title, but of course she's one of the main contenders anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like all the top 10 players are in except for Pegula.
Yeah, because Pegula, I think, was the only one who played Charleston, right? And they kind of swapped in this way that Pegula played Charleston and all the other years on Stuttgart. Unless I'm maybe forgetting about, like, Bencic. Yeah, I don't think she's here. But I don't know if Bencic is in the top 10 right now even.
Yeah, I think she's just outside the top 10.
Yeah, she could be like 11, 12. Yeah, 11.
Right. Yeah, this field is absolutely loaded. I mean, Ostapenko, Raducanu is the first round. So is Goff and Kudermetova.
The sickest one is probably Goff, Kudermetova, and Krejcikova, Samsonova, right? That's like the most ranking wise. Probably it's even Goff, Kudermetova, but you could argue that maybe Krejcikova, Samsonova is even stronger. But yeah, Kasatkina, Badosa as well. Of course, Badosa isn't really that high in the rankings right now. She needed a wild card, but still, that's huge. Yeah, Goff is 6th and Kudermetova is 13th in the WTA rankings. So have 19, only 19 spot places combined, I guess, and yet they meet in the opening round.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do this, at least don't give the seeds bias. At least maybe they could expand this draw a little bit because it's especially if there's no other events. Yeah, especially if there's no other events.
Exactly.
But that's it for the WTA basically. And then next week we also have Barcelona and Munich and Banja Luka, which I guess is the first time there's an event in ATP level in Bosnia.
In Bosnia, only Sarajevo probably didn't have one, right? And that's probably the only other option. Banja Luka has had a challenger for years, but I doubt there was an ATP event in there or in Sarajevo. Although actually, no, it was a challenger. Okay, because I started googling Sarajevo ATP, but it was a challenger. So yeah, it would seem like that.
Yeah, and of course there we have Rublev, Djokovic, Kecmanovic, Choric. Lehechka's playing as well. I mean, we could get, Wawrinka and Djokovic in the first round.
Well, really?
Yeah, because it's Wawrinka against Luka Van Asch. Winner of that plays Djokovic.
I haven't looked at the draw even, but I can pull it up right now. But wow, that would be a great story. Wawrinka, Djokovic, and
right,
yeah.
And then Djokovic is probably most likely to get a Serbian player. Well, actually, yeah, unless Grigor Barrera comes through in that section.
Usually isn't that good on clay, but I guess Lajovic, Krajinovic, they're also not in that great shape. I would love for Medjedovic to do it. Djokovic is also funding his career, right?
Right.
And that would make for a very fun quarterfinal matchup. I would love it if Hamad did it, but I don't know how realistic it is. He had a very strong moment in March and then suffered a couple of disappointing losses, so not sure. But wow, Djokovic, Wawrinka, Djokovic, Medjedovic. I really want to see both of these. Hopefully the players deliver.
Yeah. Are you high on Luka Van Asch as a prospect?
Yeah. just straight up no, honestly. I mean, he has this sort of a game where, of course, he's 18. He gets to the top 100. Super impressive. Of course, he's extremely good for his age. But I think at the ATP Tour, it's gonna be a struggle for him. Maybe on clay is his best chance. But in general, I think just for now, he's just going to be overpowered very frequently. He recently got his first ATP Tour win, right, in Estoril. But otherwise, he has kind of struggled, and I just don't see it for him at the top level. Like, comparing, these French guys, Fins definitely has it, and Van Asch, I just don't know if he's ever going to be able to establish that. Although I think that if he does a Chun-Sin Seng, which by this I mean if he gets to the ATP level winning a few challengers, but is somewhat underpowered and then only wins a few matches for 6 months, I think it would be easier for him to bounce back than Seng. Seng is even now not winning challengers. I think Van Asch would be more likely to return to this level, to the ATP level if he ever gets thrown out of the top 100, but I don't know. I still feel like it would require just so much development for him to be a reasonable a contender at the highest possible categories of events. But of course, I always say that it's so much easier for players with big weapons to predict how good they are going to be. You would probably I wasn't watching tennis back then, or at least I wasn't aware enough. But you would never probably predict that Gilles Simon is gonna be as good as he was, right, when he was coming up or something like that. So, or Diego Schwartzman. So, I have this, I have this a bit of an asterisk where I say that if he does indeed end up being a huge star, it's simply unpredictable. But for what we can see from him right now, not really.
Yeah, from what I saw against, from what I've seen from him so far, I'm not super high on him either. So, yeah, there's that.
Yeah, so I mean that event overall, I think the biggest question mark for me will just be how is Djokovic's elbow, and that will kind of decide how he sort of progresses throughout this clay court season. Because basically, we've seen the last 2 or 3 years, by the time Rome comes around, he's usually in the final or winning it, and then he sort of carries that form into Roland Garros, and then it probably gets harder from quarterfinal onwards, but he kind of just builds up his peak physical fitness to peak there, I guess. Yeah, and then of course we have Munich, where it's I'm interested. I don't think Rune is gonna play after Monte Carlo.
Yeah, this is the final. It's possible, but he's defending the title. Well, good venue for him. I think with how the courts play. Well, but he could also, even if he plays, he could also be like a candidate to lose early. Like if he plays Hanfman in the second round, that's not really that easy. But yeah, it's possible that he will draw. I kind of expect it from Rublev as well.
Yeah,
and of course Baniluka not Munich.
Right. Rublev is just gonna keep going. I think he's one of those. I don't think he ever takes a break. So
yeah, he's like the Dominic Thiem of old, where he used to play 60 matches before Wimbledon and then suck during the second half of the year.
Yeah, I think someone literally asked him in one of the ATP videos, like the questions, like do you ever go on a holiday? It's like no, maybe only for 5 days. But the other storyline for me will obviously be Thiem. Just monitoring his progress because, like most people, I so desperately want him to, get back to
monitoring his what? That's maybe a little too much, but I certainly felt a bit cheated when he played that much against Alice in Estoril. When he was saying that during practices he felt that his forehand is coming back, that his forehand has the spin, has the power again, and then he plays this sort of awful. I just had this sort of an awful performance, but with the draw he has here, I think he's very likely to get a few wins. Right, Lestienne has been also kind of injured recently. Played Shelton in the story and wasn't really fine. He's left terrible form, so yeah, certainly a big chance for Thiem to get something going. I don't think he'll ever get back to his previous level, but he can be a very successful tennis player, and he even proved it at the end of last year, right?
Yeah. I guess the curious part for me is just sort of what happened between Vienna and the start of this year.
Yeah.
That for me is like, I almost think he might have been better off just playing through that period, but it's difficult to say because at the same time I still thought that layoff would be a good thing for him to just a longer off season.
That long a layoff as well, right? Like what else was he going to play? I think he was signed up
like Paris,
Safa Challenger and Paris, and that would be 2 more events. So it wasn't that long a layoff, I guess.
That's true. But anything else from this week, or we covered it all?
I guess we did. Of course, there's also Barcelona, which I don't think we mentioned.
Oh my goodness, yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, Barcelona, obviously the return of Alcaraz, and still not at all in the draw, but Tsitsipas, obviously, I'm curious to see whether Tsitsipas can bounce back this week. I think that'll be something I'll keep my eye on because, I mean, he's
the guy that really needs matches, right?
And also, he just needs to win a 500. He's
because he still doesn't care.
Yeah. And he's lost 9 finals.
He's playing Kachin and Brouwer in the second round. That's super gettable. Shapovalov, frankly, could have a chance against him.
Yeah.
I don't care about his form. Just in an individual match, he can always do it.
Yeah.
But if he can push through that, the opportunity is pretty nice, I think, other than Sinner, even in his half. It's not really looking that threatening, so definitely a good event. He lost for him to regain some confidence. He lost to Alcaraz here last year, right? Can't remember what the event was.
Yes, in the quarters.
Quarter, because Seni was that crazy match when Carlos saved.
Against Divernor. Yeah. Yeah, he had that insane forehand pass on one of those match points. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so Alcaraz, I pretty much expect him to kind of pick up where he left off. To be honest, I don't think he really needs much time. Yeah, like him against Tiafoe or Fokina would be fun, and honestly, every match of his is fun. But yeah, wow.
I very much agree with this statement. Definitely, I think he's a very worthy successor of the biggest names we've had in tennis.
Yeah.
In that, he's just really entertaining whatever he does, basically. And I also kind of expect him to just, I just consider him the biggest favorite for Roland Garros at the moment, and just think if he plays Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, Paris, like he's bound to win at least one of these events, and maybe even more. I wanted to say at least two, but
no, I know. I think it could happen, but the only thing is like I'm worried about his health. Like, is he going to be able to sustain Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, and Paris, like all in this stretch? He didn't. Right?
He withdrew, right? But maybe he can do something like this again. Just play Madrid, Barcelona, don't play Rome.
Yeah, I almost want him to play Rome though instead of Madrid. He's already won Madrid, and then could just Rome is like more similar to
but he's not gonna do it, right? That's
true.
But you're very right that of course the conditions are much different between Madrid and Paris. Much bigger jump. I remember last year that I was definitely also pushing. What can I do? But I remember being very happy that Świątek has decided to withdraw from Madrid and just plays Rome, Paris in May. Because that definitely felt like the right move, especially after winning Stuttgart. And you're very right that it would make more sense to skip Madrid than Rome, but it's not happening if you're a Spaniard.
Yeah, definitely. And then also I'm curious about Wu Yibing, of course, because since Dallas we've not really seen much of him,
Is he the Alicia Parks of men's tennis?
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I wonder if that's going to be the case, because of course at the challenger level he's done, he's achieved great results other than indoors, but so far, both Indian Wells, Miami were very disappointing. I don't know if it was one of the slower courts in Miami, but they definitely made it look like that. But he just couldn't hit through any, either Davidovich, Fokina, or Schwartzman. He had that tough match with Munar. I don't know. I definitely want to sort of see how he does first. He can be very, very spotty in his shot selection, which is something we mentioned about a different player at the beginning of the this recording. But he can be like really wild with how he chooses to play with his forehand. Just sometimes tries to be like it's Del Potro, and on clay it could be a big issue. I think I've seen him play on clay like 3-4 times probably only, because he hasn't been around for long on the tour, of course, and he had the 3-year hiatus. But I just remember when he played on it a bit on his in the beginning of his run last year, he was doing fine, but it didn't really feel like this was going to be the conditions when he was going to be best. Like whenever he is indoors, whenever he can take it so early, when he can just drop that insane shot making, like in Dallas against pretty much everyone. That was such a strong round, and I mean he played like a top 20 guy for sure, but I just have to see if it's translatable. And it would make him very similar to Alicia Parks, in fact, that indoors she played like a top 20, top 50 player, and otherwise he's struggling for wins. Who probably would get more than Parks, at least looking at what we are seeing from them for now, but I'm not confident he'll beat Schwartzman, although it would be fantastic to see him play Sinner. Just watch him face another high quality player. He kind of showed he can beat them with Fritz, with Shapovalov, just making them look very ordinary compared to him. But of course, clay against Sinner, it's going to be a different step up in quality if he can beat Schwartzman, even because in Miami it didn't really look great.
Yep. And then the good thing for Parks is at least Stuttgart is indoors, but it's on.
Yeah, but she already lost in qualies, right? So
she's in the main draw now.
Yeah,
because lucky
as a lucky loser. Yeah, but
She plays Sank.
Looking at her easy loss against Korpach, I don't know if it's gonna help.
No.
But I was kind of excited when she beat Korpach yesterday. I was like, oh, indoor clay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
She can do it. She can do it here. But yeah, we'll see how she fares against Zheng. I guess either would be a tough matchup for Świątek, but definitely, Zheng has to be the favorite there.
Yeah, and then of course I'm keeping my eye on Ben Shelton as well because, yeah, this sample size for him is so small.
Ben Shelton.
Yeah.
Very winnable, McDonald. Wow.
Yeah, and and even Rude, it's.
Well, I mean, he's beaten him already, but on clay, in Madrid, maybe in Madrid.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he lost to Dimitrov in Monte Carlo. And then before that, he played that match against Team, but he was honestly very sick that day, so I don't really read too much into it. And also, I mean, it was his second match ever on the surface.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, at this point, it's just, it's good he's playing this, and whatever the results are, it doesn't really matter. With the Australian Open quarters, he's like given himself a lot of leeway, and at least until January, to basically suck during the clay court season, and for this not to matter. But this is the right call for sure. Same thing like Nakashima did a couple years back, or like Fritz, I guess, just pushing himself to play more on clay. Even if maybe results-wise it wasn't really that important, and maybe he would have been better off. I don't know doing what, because all the major events are on clay, but just not forcing himself to that. But you have to. If Shelton, and of course he thinks that he's gonna play on the ATP tour throughout his career, we all think that, and in the long run, it's definitely good for him. So I don't really care about his results in this clay court season. It's just important that he gets the practice there.
Yeah, exactly. And personally, I would love to see an Alcaraz versus Davidovich Fokina quarterfinal. That would be my one, because I mean, like, watching ADF and Indian Wells, honestly, probably the highlight of my day when he played that match against Hachinov in Indian Wells, and then I mean, he lost to him 2-2 in Monte Carlo, but man, another guy who has all the shots, but the shot selection. Because he has that similar ability to push you behind the baseline and then throw in the drop shot, and the athleticism is kind of off the charts when it's on.
Yeah, that's why that Davidovich Fokina Wu match as well seems so exciting in Indian Wells, because they both struggle with the same things, and they're both like insanely talented in terms of the hand skills and etc. But when they actually played, it was just making countless errors, while Davidovich Fokina was defending just far too well. But I can get why you would want that. I'm honestly not that big a Davidovich Fokina enjoyer. Not really sure what's stopping me from that, but I don't really watch his matches that much unless he plays against a very exciting opponent, which Alcaraz would be.
Yes. No, I think amongst all the players born in 1999, like, I think he might have the highest ceiling. We'll put it that way. Doesn't mean he's gonna do the best, but
didn't you put out a list of them or something?
I did, yes, and I think Fokina was the most popular answer. So
and for
it's like Fokina, Divinor, Etcheverry, like Shapovalov,
think
a few other names.
Wasn't even Wu there as well?
Yeah, Viving Wu was there as well.
Yeah, so I think I would probably vote for him, just in terms of the sheer peak. But I can totally get Fokina. I remember this list was not that impressive. There were stars of the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my bare fear wasn't exactly that rich in at least stars of the game. It is rich in tennis players, just every single year.
Right. But I think we'll probably close shop here, because we covered quite a bit of ground. Otherwise, we're in danger of doing a 6-hour podcast.
We're already at 1.5 probably, right?
Yeah. So I think if our listeners are still listening,
we would be able to do it. But let's not test that ability.
Yeah, I think if our listeners are still tuned in, we've that I consider that a pretty successful thing. If they're still listening at an hour and a half in.
Yeah.
But yeah, Damian, this was fun, and we should do this again.
100%. Oh, definitely up for it. I get what she said about like if any listener is still there, it's good. I often say at the end of the Challenger shows that like thanks for listening, especially if you stayed until the very end. I don't know how you do it, so I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you managed to listen to till the end, big commiserations to you.
Yeah. And yeah, just tell all your friends about this podcast, and follow Damian on social media, and where can we follow you on Twitter? What's your handle again?
Just my name, Damian Kust. So easy, simple.
Yep, pretty simple. And yeah, I think Owen and Andre will be back on the show as well soon. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.